faces on the line. So thank you for joining us today for our Renewable Energy Day training about how to talk with Indiana legislators. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. First with a little just quick Zoom tutorial. Hopefully most folks are familiar with Zoom at this point. But just want to give a little bit of an overview for those who might be still new to the platform. First of all, this is a meeting that will have interactive elements. So we encourage everybody to turn on your video. You can do that by clicking the little video icon in the bottom left. And later in the webinar or in the meeting, we will have an opportunity for folks to talk, but we're going to start out with some presentations. So if you aren't presenting, please keep yourself on mute just to make sure we preserve audio quality. You can also see in the bar at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to click on participants, and that will allow you to see who else is online with us right now. And you can also raise your hand by clicking on the little raise hand icon, and that will indicate if you have a question. But because we do have such a tight agenda, we'd like to preserve questions and keep them in the chat. So you can click on the little chat box. Feel free to introduce yourself, ask questions. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout the event, and we'll try to answer questions as much as we can. Just if you are trying to send a question, please be sure to send your comment or question to everyone so everybody can see it. Though you can also direct messages via the chat function as well. And then finally, you can choose your own video layout. So if you want to see everybody, if you want to just see the person speaking, you can choose some different options, whether it's speaker view, just looking at one person, or gallery view to see more folks. Okay, so here is the agenda for the day. I'm going to kick us off with a pretty high level, quick and dirty overview of the 2021 Indiana General Assembly session. Next, I will hand it off to Tim Phelps, who is the president of the Indiana Conservative Alliance for Energy, to talk about renewable energy and effective messaging to conservatives. After that, we'll hear from Jen Wagner, the founder of MassAv PR, who will cover some message testing that she's done and talking points around net metering that will hopefully be helpful this year. And then Dori Chandler, from the Public Policy Director of Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light, will take over to cover some legislator meeting do's and don'ts. And then she will also talk about the breakout role-playing activity that we're going to end the event with. Then we'll go into those breakout sessions. So we'll go into smaller groups where we can practice some of the stuff that we're learning today. And then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end to come back, talk about that experience before we wrap things up. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and keep us going. So talking about the General Assembly here in Indiana, it's the key fact to note is that Republicans have supermajorities in both houses. They actually expanded that supermajority in the House and now have 71 members in the Indiana House and 39 members in the Indiana Senate. And obviously 2021 is a little bit of a strange year. So with COVID-19 kind of injecting uncertainty into the process, we kind of all have to see how things go, but we can talk a little bit about what we expect, so at least you have those facts in mind. So the only thing that is required to be done during this legislative session is a 2-year state budget. And also we expect new congressional and state legislative districts to be drawn by the General Assembly. We also would expect COVID-19 response to be among the top issues. So everything else, is kind of fighting for attention. That's why it's really important for renewable energy advocates like us to make our voices heard. So the General Assembly session started at the beginning of January, and we're already kind of quickly progressing through the expected calendar, though again, due to COVID-19 and other factors, for instance, this week, a potential crisis of democracy canceled a legislative session. So we're gonna kind of have to keep our eyes and ears open to see how things change. But under the current expected schedule, the third week of February is the final passage deadline for bills coming out of their originating houses. And so just to be clear on that, bills will have to pass out of their assigned committee first. So if they don't pass out of the committee, they can't pass out of the House. But so here in the first couple weeks of February is really when we'll start seeing what bills are going to move this year and what bills won't. So after a bill passes out of the first House, it will have to also pass out of the second House if it's going to become law. And so the current timeline for that is that by April 19th or 20th, that's when the final passage deadline out of the second House is expected to be. And then April 29th is when we expect session to adjourn, although that, all of these deadlines could potentially change by action of the legislative bodies. So right now, we're obviously going to be talking about renewable energy issues. And so there are really key players in both houses. So in addition to kind of the overall leadership of, so the Speaker of the House and the leadership in the House, the Senate President Pro Tem and leaders in the Senate, the key committees to really pay attention to are those committees where most renewable energy or utility bills are assigned. And so in the House, we have the House Utilities, Energy, and Telecommunications Committee. And that's chaired by Ed Soliday, whose district is up around Valparaiso. And the ranking minority member is Matt Pierce, whose district is in Bloomington. And so these folks that you see on the screen here really have outsized influence on the issues that we'll be talking about today in the House. Over in the Senate, similar dynamic, we have the Senate Utilities Committee. That's chaired by Senator Eric Cook, whose district is in Bedford and Columbus. And then the ranking minority member is Gene Breaux here in Indianapolis. And so I just want to give a very quick overview of some of the bills that we're keeping an eye on. There are so many relevant bills that have been introduced. So not enough time for us to talk about all of them here today. But the most important ones that we're tracking right now are SB 420, which was introduced by Senator Yoder. And it's what we're colloquially calling the 5x4 plan to extend and expand net metering. It would extend net metering by 5 years, raise the cap on net metering to 5% from the current 1.5%. It would increase the system size of facilities eligible for net metering from 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts. And it would allow for the aggregation of meters up to 5 meters, which means you can use your solar credits on multiple meters. And then it would also create a data-driven process for replacing net metering, which would be really critical to the future of distributed solar in the state of Indiana. Another bill we're following closely is SB 249, which was introduced by Senator Alting. And that would extend net metering for 2 years while also raising the net metering cap to 5%. Among other technical changes to the net metering rules that are on the books right now. Next in the House, there's HB 1394, which was introduced by Representative Tony Cook. And that bill would extend net metering for 2 years, raise the net metering cap to 3%, and then also allows for the meter aggregation of up to 3 meters but only for public schools and local governments. And then finally, there's HB 1560, which was introduced by Representative Speedy, which is an HOA solar access law, basically stopping homeowners associations from putting unreasonable restrictions or banning solar installations on homes in the HOA. And this would only apply for governing documents created or amended after June 30th of this year. So as I mentioned, there are way more relevant bills that you might be interested in. And you can find all those bills at Citizens Action Coalition's website. We have the link here. I think we can circulate these slides afterwards, but you can just find it easily by going to citact.org. Okay, I think that is everything that I'm going to cover. So I will go ahead and kick it over. I will kick it over to Tim to give his presentation. Take it away, Tim.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone today. I apologize for the kind of inconveniently sun is apparently shining directly into my window today. So got kind of a tiger stripe thing going. Let me go ahead and share my screen if that works for you guys. That way everyone can see the show. Okay, so they asked, when they asked us to participate in this event, kind of the idea is let's think about, obviously, how we can talk to conservatives about renewable energy and what are the types of messaging that works. So, sorry, there we go. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So my name's Tim Phelps. I work for a company called Hathaway Strategies. We, 3 years ago now, we were able to participate in the launch of an organization called the Indiana Conservative Alliance for Energy. It's an organization, it's founded by conservatives who believe in a genuine all of the above approach to energy policy. And that's the approach that values really all energy in our state, but really we have an emphasis on clean and renewable energy that really is where where everything is headed these days. We enjoy talking about market-based solutions, conservative energy solutions here in Indiana. We're part of a national network, the Conservative Energy Network, that, forgive me, the number of states that the network is in is growing on an annual basis. I think it's over 20 now, but we've been really happy to be involved here in Indiana. So when we're looking at these issues, I think I appreciate Zack's presentation. He talked about the makeup of the Indiana State Legislature. Really, the State House is no secret, is dominated by Republicans. We have supermajorities in the State House, supermajority in the State Senate, obviously 6 of 6 statewide elected positions. Even if you look at the federal side being 7-2 and 2-0, and just by way of saying, if there is to be energy policy progress made at the state level, in so many respects, it's going to need to be led by Republicans. So as part of that, the way that the legislature is built today, primary voters are a crucial constituency for Republican members of the Indiana General Assembly. It just is. There are so few competitive races on an annual basis or on a each election cycle. So at ICAE, we devoted resources to trying to understand the attitudes of conservative voters towards renewable energy issues. And really, we've done 2 polls. One was in 2017, one was in 2019. I expect we'll be in the field again this year, kind of once we let the political climate sort of calm down a little bit, get back in the field and see kind of where we stand. But these 2 polls are really the bedrock of this presentation we have today. And I don't have really time to go through all the polls. As a political guy, I love analyzing polls. So I think that where I'd like to start is really just the conventional wisdom. This is my message for you today. Conservative voters aren't where you think they are on renewable energy issues. Our research has been consistent on that. When you ask them about it, energy efficiency programs, 85% issue. Smart meters, 68% issue. Net metering, I'm sure we're going to talk about that later, 87% issue. Energy dereg, 75% issue. All of the above, 85% issue. These are all from 2017. We've retested some of these numbers again. And renewable energy issues, when you explain them to conservative voters, are pretty popular. And there's a disconnect. There is an absolute disconnect, even amongst people who are interested in energy, between where they think Republicans are and where they are. And even from legislators, there's a difference, I think, from what legislators think and what they think their constituents think. So a lot of what we've been doing is trying to clear up these misconceptions. I want to start from the beginning. The biggest, one of the things that polled the absolute worst in both of our polls that we've done is climate. It polls terribly amongst Republican primary voters. Let's look at the numbers. The climate change. How much do you care personally about the issue of climate change? You have a great deal, just 10%. Only 42% care some or a great deal about the issue of climate change. Not much or not at all is a clear majority at 57%. But here's, I think, the more important piece. Earth's temperature, which becomes closest to your view? Earth is getting warmer mostly because of human activity like burning fossil fuels is just 17%. Earth is getting warmer mostly due to natural and not man-made patterns. It's the plurality at 49. And there's not solid evidence the Earth is getting warmer at 28%. So here's a big challenge for us. Couple things though on the climate issue. For Republican women, 45 and under, and for college-educated Republican women, concern about climate change is a lot higher. So where it was 42% among the full sample, more than 6 in 10 care about the issue amongst Republican women or amongst college-educated Republican women. And the other thing I thought was interesting, because we've asked this battery of questions twice, is that the number who believe in kind of human-generated climate change, which is this 17% number, was consistent over both polls. In 2017, it was 17%. In 2019, it was 17%. But the number who agreed that the Earth was in fact getting warmer due to natural and not man-made patterns jumped from 41% in 2017 to nearly half, 49% in 2019. So here's your problem. Republicans believe the climate is changing, but they soundly reject the notion that we can do anything about it. 77% believe it's getting warmer, or there is not solid evidence, but due to natural causes, or there is not solid evidence we can do anything about it. That's up. That's actually up from 77%. I'm sorry, from 74% in 2017. So we're losing people, we're losing Republicans when we talk about climate, because then they stop listening to us. As an organization, we've made a tactical decision to do everything we possibly can to not talk about climate, so that we can get in the door to talk about the crucial issues on renewable energy. So that's what our research has said. So what are the messages that works? This is actually interesting. We were in the field in 2017 and 2019. In 2017, we were in the field in September or late August. And it was right, you may recall, it was when Houston was basically underwater. So there was a hurricane that hit Houston, and there was a massive flood. And the notion was, it was all over the news, the notion was that would impact our numbers. And in fact, we added a question about extreme weather, and it didn't really impact it. Same with 2019, and forgive me, I don't recall, I believe it was, you remember in 2019 when it basically like wouldn't stop raining in May, like all the farm fields were getting flooded? And this is when we were in the field in 2019. And it just didn't even impact it at all. So that's not a big issue for us. Clean air, less pollution, that does work. Pollution is something no one likes. Having cleaner air and less pollution is a strongly positive message. That keys well with everybody. No one will disagree that it's better to have clean air than less clean air. No one will disagree it's better to have less pollution than more pollution. That's a pretty consistent. 3/4 of Republicans found the message convincing, and 32% found it very convincing. Those are good numbers for us. It was the most effective message with men and very strong with women. Here's another thing we asked about. There are a lot of people in the conservative movement who are motivated by faith-based tendencies. And there are many people in the conservative clean energy movement who are mostly motivated by this idea that it is my obligation as a Christian to preserve God's creation. And we tested that, but actually, and that did fine, and the message tested well. But you know what did it even better? Is citizenship. Is me as a good neighbor, as a good citizen, I have the kind of moral duty to take care of my home, and it works well across the board, scores highest intensity among women, and tied with pollution message is strongest with voters under 45. So the citizenship and faith-based still works, but citizenship worked a little bit better. So it could be one of those things where if it's a deeply Christian member, something like that, that could work too. Jobs numbers, surprisingly, not really effective. I think that part of this was that we go in a lot and talk to legislators about, and you guys know, you'd be surprised how few people in Indiana are employed by the coal industry, and you would be surprised by how many people in Indiana are employed by the solar industry. But those arguments weren't as effective. What we found that was more effective is talking about aspiration. If we agree that we want to have cleaner air and we agree that we want to have less pollution, then we should aspire to be better. And that'll help us signal that we're ready to have this next level economy, a message that the governor does repeatedly. It proved a lot easier than talking about specific job numbers. Climate skeptics, and as I said, there's a lot of them. This idea of energy independence and national security was most effective when talking people who were most skeptical on climate. National security is an issue that always tests really well. Energy independence issue that always tests real well amongst conservatives. Pragmatism. I think that this is maybe a nice Hoosier tendency. But pragmatic messages like reducing air pollution, reducing dependence on foreign oil, helping Indiana position itself as a next level economy. These are pragmatic positions. It's to say, we need to take care of our land, our backyard. We don't want to be depending on anybody. We want to be able to unleash American energy. And while doing that, we can do our part to take care of air pollution, to make air cleaner. All these pragmatic messages were proven effective. So all these key messages I've talked about so far are based on our 2017 poll. So it was a little bit bigger of a poll that allowed us to test more messaging. But we went back in 2019, and we tried to ask about more issues that we saw were coming up, especially in the state legislature. One of the issues we're seeing repeatedly at ICAE and with our allied organization in the Land and Liberty Coalition, who's organizing on the ground in many rural communities across Indiana, is property rights. Property rights does really well amongst conservative voters. If there is a conflict between the government and private landowners for land use, 87% of Republicans say the landowner should decide. This is a bedrock conservative issue, and property rights tend to poll really well. Support for private landowners, and this isn't in the slide, remains just as high when it comes to whether they should be able to lease or sell their land to wind and solar developers. Just 9%, and this is an issue that we're running into on a daily basis, and it speaks to, I think, the wind siting bill that's going through the legislature a little bit. Just 9% of Republicans think that county government should be able to prohibit private landowners from leasing or selling their land to wind and solar developers. 9%. And the last thing, markets drive value. I think that it's it's an intuitive message, but it works, is that the price of renewable energy is going down because of market forces. It's supply and demand. And that's that same supply and demand that's really been changing the energy mix in our state. It's cheaper to make energy not from coal than it is to make energy from coal today. And that's a pragmatic financial decision that's being made by private companies. So we asked them about a couple things. One was, we have a monopoly system right now. So 3/4 support ending the monopoly on energy development, 3/4 of Republicans. And an overwhelming 87% favor continuing to give electricity customers fair market value for electricity they create. I guess instead of support using solar panels. I guess it's still true. But net metering, that's net metering. We explained to them what it was, and 87% support fair market value. That's a great issue amongst Republican voters. So I think you're doing lobby tips later. I mean, so I won't go too much into this, and I'm interested in any questions you guys have. But I think that my advice for this group is I've talked a lot about conservative messaging, but authenticity is key. I don't know that, each advocate is most effective with an argument that they believe in. I would never suggest to go into a meeting with a deeply conservative legislator and just give him conservative talking points, because they can sense that inauthenticity. I think that what you can do is learning what you've learned today is keeping in mind some of these tips that might work. And this idea that, here's this whole list of things that we agree on, we can see that we can clean our air, we can have less pollution, and we can take care of our state in a way that saves consumers money, that saves businesses money. Our state gives energy consumers more choices so that they can save on their bills. All those issues are going to do really well amongst conservatives, but authenticity is really important, and being able to talk with authority on this stuff. So I think that was it. I'm happy. I don't know, Zach, how we are on time, but I'm happy to answer any questions that people have.
I think you came in under time after I came in overtime, so I think we do have.
Oh, nice. Well, maybe we're back. We're back on track.
I think we could probably take a couple minutes if folks have questions, maybe just 2 or 3 questions. I think we'd have time for, if anybody. I see one in the chat that I think is a great one to start with. What do you say when given the response that solar and wind are not reliable, like because they're intermittent energy sources, or they're only profitable because they're subsidized? So like how would you respond to those kind of things, which are definitely common?
Well, yeah,
responses?
I mean, I think you can take the second one. I think you can take the second one easier, which is if you look today, wind and solar sources are cheaper than traditional fossil fuel-based sources, even when they're not subsidized. And that's happening more and more. It's, I think, taken a while when we talk to people about that, to be able to say, I know that you think that it's cheaper to run this huge plant that's driven by fossil fuels, but it's not in new generation. So it's just a matter of speaking to those, and you don't have to be the validator on that. Look at what utilities are doing. Look at what businesses are doing, which is utilities are the ones leading the way on making investments in renewable energy sources. And the proof is in the pudding there. I mean, they're going to make power in the way they can make the most money, and that they can deliver it as cheaply as possible to their customers. And they're the ones that are driving that. And it's certainly not been driven by a renewable portfolio standard in Indiana. So to the reliability question, I think that, I don't like to accept that premise. And I think that most of the things that we're asking for, like net metering, like HOA solar, really have nothing to do with reliability. It's a false choice. I shouldn't have to be able to decide between having reliable power and having net metering. What net metering is giving me is choice, so that I can take back the power, so to speak, on how I can manage my own energy costs. So net metering, reliability is a non-issue when it comes to net metering. And consumers should be able to choose whether or not they want to make power. And just like, the government sets the rate on what the utility can charge for power. And we know what the rate is, and that's what they should pay their consumers. That's the value of what they're producing.
Great, thank you. And I see we got one more question. I think this will be our last question here. Leslie asks, what is Hathaway doing to reach out to Republican constituents this session?
We're working through the Indiana Conservative Alliance for Energy. We launched in 2018, and have been doing what we can to talk to conservatives about these issues and talk about this research we've done. We've got a pretty active presence on social. We when we can, in a legal fashion, can talk directly to when we can talk to legislators or educate them on these issues, talk about this polling data, talk about conservative ideas and approaches to energy. So it's just about kind of spreading the word. We've been very lucky. We have Mayor Ballard is on our board. We've just added Mayor Winicky from Evansville to our board, two great, I guess, former Republican mayor and Greg Ballard, and current Republican mayor, and Mayor Winicky in Evansville. And certainly working on building out the coalition anywhere we can.
Great, thank you, Tim. Really appreciate it. And hopefully, if there are any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. And I think we can go ahead and keep moving with Jen Wagner talking about some net metering messaging.
All right, thanks, Zach. And I do not have a screen share for everybody, but I am suffering from the same sort of tiger stripe issue that that Tim is suffering from in the midday here. So I'm Jen Wagner. I am the founder, owner of MassAv Public Relations. I help a number of different organizations on clean energy outreach and talking points and any other communications needs here in Indiana. And my past is in politics and advocacy. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes here, and I'm going to be very mindful of it, kind of dovetailing off of what Tim just said and going over a little bit of research that we did earlier this year with a national firm on the issue specifically of net metering. And I know someone had popped into the comments that it sounds more like we need to just to offer support and talk about this issue. And that is 100% true. So we did a series of Facebook ad testing earlier this year. Well, no, not earlier this year. Sorry, it's 2021. Hard to get that through my head. Last year. And we tested a number of different frames or message frames about net metering to see how they played and to see which ones were the best. Overall, we had a lot of surface level engagement on every single frame that we tested, but our sort of deep engagement, which is people really getting there and interacting with the different messages, was still not great. So that means there's a lot of potential to continue engaging people and educating them on the issue of net metering. So we tested the frames of economy and jobs, which, as Tim noted, is actually not all as popular as you would think it would be. The future of our state. So if we don't continue net metering, we will be left behind. The free market approach, which again, you might think would be the most popular in a very Republican state like we live in, it was not. We tested a fairness and equity frame, a climate action and health frame, and then we did an oversample in the Vectren market down in Evansville on how Vectren wants to underpay its ratepayers for energy that they produce. So what we found, and this again mirrors what Tim just went through, the fairness and equity frame actually did the best. So people really liked the idea that if we don't pay people or reimburse them or credit them the appropriate rate for energy they return to the grid, that is unfair. And specifically, they really liked, again, net metering is the only fair way to pay Hoosiers, and it's unfair to pay Hoosiers less than the value of the solar energy they generate. So as we move forward, both with this training and in our engagement with legislators, that issue really resonates. The fact that, we are, a state that values equity, that we value, and those are not, by the way, those are not words that you would think would be popular in a very red state, but they absolutely were. So you'll note in the guide that was sent out, there are some talking points probably about halfway through. And the three things that I want to focus on here before I hand it back over to Zach and we do some fun breakout sessions. By the way, I get to be Representative Ned Dallasay today, so I hope you're in my room. So Hoosier homeowners, businesses, and schools want to embrace energy freedom and generate their own electricity. They should be allowed to do so and paid a fair rate. Energy freedom should be accessible to all Hoosiers. If we let net metering expire, that places energy freedom out of reach for those who would no longer receive a fair rate for the power they generate. And then, lesser, but still a popular frame was this idea that we are a state that's moving forward. As Tim alluded to, the governor likes to talk about next level projects, next level policies. And if we don't continue to move forward and embrace policies like net metering, we will be left behind. So I'm going to stop talking because I know we are short on time and you've given us all your lunch breaks today. But I am happy to answer questions offline. You can hit me up. I'm Jennifer@massavpr.com. There are also some sample letters to the editor, sample call scripts, and other types of products like that, sample social media shares. Anything that we can do to get this issue out in front of lawmakers, both with Renewable Energy Day, but just anything else that we can do will help, because there's a low level of knowledge still about net metering and clean energy across our state.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you, Jennifer. I just shared a link to the document with talking points that Jen mentioned. Super helpful. Thank you for that. And yeah, let's go ahead and keep moving with Dori. I think you're on mute, Dori.
Sorry. Okay, great. So as Zach and Tim both alluded to before, there's some do's and don'ts for how to talk and have meetings with your legislators. So first of all, does my voice really matter? The Congressional Management Foundation is a nonprofit that works with legislators and their staff to generate opinions about how to best connect with constituents, and does a lot of polling indicating what legislators feel like is the best way. And they say that direct constituent interactions have more influence on lawmakers' decisions than any other advocacy strategies. So that means making phone calls or sending emails or letters. Actually meeting face-to-face or virtually on Zoom has more influence. Legislators place a high value on groups and citizens who have built relationships with them, and long-term relationships especially. So we'll talk in a little bit about roles for your lobby meetings and how to create strong groups. And a lot of that means building and maintaining long-term relationships with them. So why lobby in the first place? There's a really simple reason why we have the stereotypes associated with lobbying and why companies pay so much for lobbyists. It's because it works. Many of us have hung around the state legislature and know that we may be a couple of community advocates in the room, and there are oftentimes numbers of lobbyists, paid lobbyists for other organizations. And many of these are interests at the State House that don't necessarily align with ours. So utilities or fossil fuel producers and corporate interests. Yet at the end of the day, our legislators represent us, the constituents. And so being a voice in the room is extremely important. So what is the role of citizens or citizen lobbyists? First of all, legislators can't possibly know everything. They rely on others to inform them. This is extremely important. This educational piece is extremely important. They see all different types of issues. So highlighting issues that we care about is extremely important. And in the absence of citizens, our legislators are informed by lobbyists from industry and the party, rather than from our interests. So what is lobbying? It's simply making a case for what you believe your legislator should do. So as Tim was talking about before, authenticity is really important. There are those citizen lobbyists with an opinion who will just come into the room and share a whole bunch of facts. And then there are those with an interest and a personal story. We'd really recommend that you find your personal story and bring that into the room with you. So rather than reading a whole bunch of facts right now, I'll just share that when I first saw solar panels on the rooftop of the Oxford Place Senior Apartments on the Near East Side of Indianapolis, this is a senior apartment living center that is partially powered by solar energy, and I almost cried. because this was a space that our elderly could live the remaining years of their life in a way that was powered by the sun, not by dirty fossil fuels. And as Tim mentioned, me as a steward of the community, and my faith really calls me to live in harmony with creation and to take care of the most vulnerable among us. And this was something that was achieving both. And so I really encourage you to find what your personal story is and begin with the end in mind. What is the ask that you want to get across? Set the stage and establish the stakes. Paint the picture of what you see as opportunity and an aspiration. What's the struggle or conflict? And then at the end, what's your discovery of optimism or possibility? And we'll have a minute to practice that in just a moment. So what's the most valuable lobbying tool? Knowledge and specific knowledge of how a policy decision will impact your legislator's district. I know that when we at Hipple have talked with folks in the Petersburg area, they're extremely concerned about their tax base. What's going to happen? Who's going to pay for the ambulances? Who's going to pay for the school buses if they don't have their plant in operation? So talk about that. Talk about a new tax base. Talk about what that could be like with opportunity there. Also, who specifically are you lobbying? Yesterday, some of you joined us for our Hipple statewide call, and we had folks on who are doing specifically Catholic organizing for members of the state legislature who identify that way. So if you find other grass tops people who maybe other members of faith who are the same as you, bring them to the table with your meetings with the legislator. Also, what school do they attend? If you also went to Notre Dame, you can kind of talk about sports and what issues they specifically care about. And look at their history. What bills have they supported or opposed and why? Also, building relationships, as we talked about before, also doing it with genuine respect, appreciation, and gratitude, even if you may disagree on many issues. And come with an appreciation that can change the whole attitude and the whole feeling of the rest of the meeting. So the ask, what you're bringing to the table. So we talked about a couple of specific policies for supporting, and this could be your primary ask. A primary ask is generally an ask that's a reach ask. It's what you hope deep down in the bottom of your heart that this legislator will do. When I was lobbying Senator Mike Braun, we didn't know that he was going to be an advocate for climate and for moving around environmental issues. This is something he really cares about. And when we asked him to be a co-sponsor at the federal level of the Climate Solutions Caucus, he actually agreed. So this was definitely a reach ask, not one that we thought was possible. The secondary ask is your accountability ask. It's one next step that you can ask your member to take to kind of get them on the path, and also something that you can hold them accountable for later when you check in. And again, we talked about appreciation. Find something you can respect, admire, and appreciate about them. This could be anything from, I really appreciated how you gave a presentation to youth in my district, to I really appreciate that bill that you supported. Try to find something really genuine and authentic to start your meeting with. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit to our lobby team roles, and then we're going to go ahead and get into our groups and practice this with some real legislators. So pick somebody in your group to be the leader or liaison. This is somebody who empowers everyone to share their ideas and participate, and maybe somebody who's developed a long-term relationship with your leader, with your legislator. Also, somebody who maybe is not comfortable yet speaking up but wants to help out the team can be a biographer, can create a bio ahead of time and send it to the team. Somebody should be appreciator, and again, these can be, depending on the size of your team, an individual can fill multiple roles. Somebody should be keeping time and asking at the beginning how long your legislator has for a meeting. And then someone should definitely take notes. We have in the Renewable Energy Lobby Guide a note-taking section for following up with us so that we can keep connected about what your legislator supports. Somebody who is responsible for bringing some questions to the table and encourages others to participate. We should really be listening a lot and not just talking. And then someone who makes the ask, the primary and or secondary ask of their legislator. And then someone who follows up. We know in the virtual space that we can't really do photos in the same way, but I encourage you all to figure that out with technology and take a Zoom photo of everybody and share that on social media afterwards, letting folks know, again, this is part of accountability. And then anybody to follow up, this could be the liaison or someone who's specifically going to follow up with educational materials. All right, so in a minute, we're going to get into, we're separating everybody out into groups. You are going to be practicing with your legislator. We're gonna have 5 breakout groups. Senator Zack Baldwin-Schalk is going to be a pro-renewable energy person. He's not familiar with the issue, so it's, if you're in Senator Schalk's district, then it's your responsibility to educate him on the issue. And Senator Molly Alting-Gillespie is very supportive of the issue, so you don't really need to convince her. You need to find out how you can help her achieve her goals and which other members you need to get on board as co-sponsors. Senator Shannon Lysing Anderson will be the Rural Republican Caucus. This is someone who maybe has had issues with wind or solar siting or feels very strongly about local control. Senator Jennifer Soliday Wagner is potentially in opposition, but controls the leadership and is kind of old guard, has very strong feelings about things, sort of needs to be heard and listened to. And then I'll be Representative Sullivan Chandler. I'm interested in renewable energy and very conservative. I support the issue, but I don't necessarily vote with the issue. I will vote with my caucus. So we're gonna go ahead and get into groups. I would recommend the first thing you do is decide who each person in your group, which role you're going to be, and then go ahead and get on the business of convincing us why we should support the bills that you are bringing to our attention.